Hey, okay. We are streaming live. And one other thing to do, and then we'll go through the kirtan. All right. Let's get going. All right. One of my favorite songs. Guitar. Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai Hey Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai Gokutaruni Mandala Mahi Jai Gokutaruni Mandala Mahi Vardana Veshe Purinas Kutarina Vivineshe Namodarati Vardana Veshe Purinas Kutarina Vivineshe Rande Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai Navashashi Leke Lalita Sakiguna Ramita Vishoke Vishabandati Navashashi Leke Lalita Sakiguna Ramita Vishoke Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Karuna Bharate Sanaka Sanatana Varitacha Rite Karuna Guru Mai Karuna Bharate Sanaka Sanatana Varitacha Rite Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Radhe Jaya Jaya Madhava Jai Jai Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paramahansa All Stotera Sajashi Shimad His Divine Grace Savaya Charanana Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Param Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siddhigor Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Jagadath Sami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sanama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutle Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravadi Pacharane Nivashesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Dejatarne Shilpavad Ki Jai. So, I guess we're going to continue with our study of the Jaiva Dharma by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Nice to see everybody here again. And we're going to, I should read the translation. O Radha, all glories unto you, all glories unto you, beloved of Madhava, object of worship for all the young girls of Gokula. You dress yourself in such a way as to increase Lord Damodar's love and attachment for you. You are the controller of Vrindavan, the pleasure groves of Lord Hari. You are new moon arisen from the ocean of King Vrishabhanu. You are the friend of Lalita, and your wonderful qualities, friendliness, kindness, and faithfulness to Krishna endear you to Vishaka. You are an ocean of compassion, and your divine characteristics are described by the four Kumaras, Naka, Sanatana, Sananda, and Sanat Kumara. O Radha, please be merciful to me. Oh, Facebook is not working. Let me check on that again. That's actually an important thing. I may have to take a second out of the class just to make sure it's working. Well, it's working. Let me check it.
We are streaming live.
Oh, it stopped. You are right. Let me just check the YouTube. Sorry about that, everybody. YouTube is working.
Just to make sure it's working.
Okay, YouTube is working. Facebook. Give me 1 second.
Oh, it stopped. You are right.
Give me 1 second. I'm so sorry about this technical glitch. Technical glitch. Let me see what the problem is. Check the server. It's trying to connect. Let's see. Give me 1 second. The server's trying to connect. Let's just redo this again. Sometimes we have a little glitch on the server. I'm just accessing the server right now. Facebook Live. Give me 1 second. Krishna Goswami. Multi-streaming. point. Just linked on the server. It's connected. Should be connected now. Let me just double check to make sure. Thank you for letting me know, because it's essential that people are able to connect like that. Wait a second. No, was live, isn't it? It's not working. It says connected. Let me just give me a second. I am going to do one other thing here. Sorry for the technical glitch, everyone. Right. And if this doesn't work, we'll just have to continue with the class. Nope. Anyway, problem with the server. Okay. Anyway, we'll just continue with the class, and it's really strange. Oh, maybe it's on the wrong thing. Just one more try. One more try. Oh, here we go. Got it. That was what I was doing before. If this doesn't work, I don't know what will. Sorry, everybody who's waiting for the class, but it's important that we. Okay. All right. Connected, connected, connected. Okay. Yeah, we're live. Whoop, it just ended. Okay, let's just continue with the class. Everyone will have to go on YouTube if they want to see it, or just go on Zoom. I'm sorry about this. There's some glitch in the server. It just started and then stopped again. I know I hate to do this during the class. All right. There's nothing I can do right now. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'll post the class later to Facebook. So, without further ado, Om Ganat Timidandasha Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Un Miditam Yena Tasmai Shigurve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master's divine grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of, and share the screen. All right. And let's see. Okay. I am really sorry about all this. These glitches. But we will try our best to make up for it. Here we go. Jaiva Dharma. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So today we're going to continue, hopefully, by the mercy of the internet, we're going to continue with our study of Jaiva Dharma. Okay, we're live again on Facebook. Hopefully it stays on Facebook. Okay, we're live again. Okay. Here we are. So we're talking about the difference between the Jiva soul and Brahman, or the Supreme Brahman, who is Krishna. So, Jagat Avya... Let's see, where did we end? Okay. Yeah, we ended there. The liberated Jiva cannot create universes because of his express statements indicating the Lord only does this, and only his statements do not, and these statements do not apply to the Jiva. That's from the Brahma Sutra 4417. Thus, the wise accept the internal difference between the Jiva, again, I'm going to explain, that's us, we're Jiva souls, and the Lord. This eternal difference is not imaginary, but is nitya siddha. So, in other words, it's eternal difference. This difference is not destroyed in any condition of the jiva. One should know that the statement, the jiva is eternally the servant of Krishna, is a mahavakya. Now, what does the word mahavakya mean? It means a great saying, an important saying. Like the Mayavadis, they say the mahavakyas, or important sayings, are things like aham brahmasmi, sosmi, you are that you are, And Om, which isn't a Mahavakya or a great saying in the Vedic literatures. As Krishna says in the Gita, Pranava sarva vedeshu shabda ke purasham nirshu. I am the syllable Om in the Vedic literatures. So, the Jiva, Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Nitya Krishna Das. That's the statement in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's Bengali. Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Nitya Krishna. Rajana said, if it is established that the Jiva is eternally different from the Lord, then how can one consider the Jiva is non-different from the Lord? Must one accept that the Jiva becomes one with the Lord in a state of nirvana? Oh my God. Another Mayavadi philosophy. So, of course, again, we're one and different from the Lord, simultaneously one in quality, different in quantity. So the Babaji answers correctly, no, in no condition is the Jiva non-different from the Lord. In other words, equal to the Lord. Brajana said, then why do you say they are inconceivably different and non-different? Babaji said the Jiva and Krishna are eternally non-different in having spiritual qualities, spiritual, and by Swarup, they are eternally different. In other words, their form, Swarupa, is eternally different. But the nature of spiritual qualities is exactly the same. Krishna likes relationships, we like relationships, although our understanding of relationships in this world is perverted. Though they're eternally non-different, they're perceived as eternally different. That may appear as a contradiction. Non-different in terms of the same nature as Krishna, like a drop of water is the same as the whole ocean. Although the drop of water could sometimes merge into the rest of the ocean, the Jiva doesn't. So that particular metaphor is not a perfect metaphor. Though they are non-different, that condition cannot be perceived. From the observation of the condition, the manifestation of eternal difference becomes stronger. So in other words, while we're here in the material world, then it's obvious that our eternal difference is there, a difference between us and Krishna. Because we can be put in Maya, Krishna can't. We are limited, Krishna is unlimited. Anyway, we're tiny, Krishna's great. One may say a house is with Devadatta and simultaneously without Devadatta. So here's a statement. Though Devadatta, just a hypothetical name, don't worry about the name, you don't have to remember it, may not be present in the house, one accepts it always as with Devadatta since he owns the house. Okay? So there's actually an example of different and non-different simultaneously. I'll give you another example of the material world. Sky is one special material substance. If some container of a portion of sky exists, even while that container of sky exists, one only thinks of the portion of sky not contained in the pot. Okay? One only thinks of the portion sky not contained in the pot. In other words, when you think of sky, you think of the whole totality. Thus, though non-difference exists, one commonly accepts the eternal difference in recognizing the object. It's a limited amount of sky, although that's not a perfect metaphor. As we read about yesterday, metaphors are never perfect as far as I know. They point out and they help us understand certain philosophical points. But you cannot prove or disprove a philosophical point using a metaphor. You can simply point people in the right direction so they can gradually understand what you're trying to explain. Like we gave the example yesterday, someone may say, my love is like a red, red rose or a beautiful flower. That doesn't mean the guy's girlfriend or wife or whatever is a flower. But there's some points in common. A flower is beautiful. And anyway, as a sannyasi, I can't comment on the girlfriend. But he may think that the girlfriend is beautiful. Although it's temporary, that's a sannyasi's duty to say that. Babaji said that Jiva is a small particle of consciousness, Anu, endowed with the quality of knowledge. It has a sense of I, is an experiencer. We have a sense of, identity. I, separate from other people. We experience a permitter. We permit certain things to happen, although a lot of things happen that we don't permit to happen. Yep. And a perceiver. We perceive things. You understand? That's like what the Jiva has an eternal swarup. Wow. We have an eternal form. That swarup is very small. In the gross body, the hands, feet, eyes, nose, ears, and other limbs are nicely placed and reveal the gross form. Similarly, in the body of the spiritual particle, all limbs are nicely manifested in one small spiritual swarupa. That is the Jiva's eternal swarupa. Bound by Maya, two bodies, the subtle body and the gross body, I'm going to explain that in a second, cover that body. The subtle body is placed upon the body of the spiritual particle. From the time of being bound until liberation, the subtle body cannot be avoided. What is the subtle body? Mind, intelligence, and false ego. It's sometimes described as the mental body, the astral body, Sanskrit, linga, sharira. It's the body of desires and impressions, and some skaras, impressions. And so this body carries us, according to Krishna and the Gita, from one gross body, which is earth, water, fire, air, and ether, to another gross body, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, because of the state of the subtle body. The example given in the Bhagavad Gita is just like the air carries the aromas from one place to another. So in the same way, the state of the subtle body carries the soul. The soul is like riding on the subtle body. carries the soul to the next gross body. So you get a gross body in accordance with your desire and your karma. Okay, give you an example. Let's say I have a really good karma and I desire to enjoy eating. The subtle body is shaped in such a way that fill the belly, that's the goal. You're the body, not the soul. In other words, the subtle body is shaped like that. So therefore, the subtle body is looking for a good situation to be a pig. Not a pig literally, but to pig out. Okay. And so the karma is the money by which the subtle body, I'm just using a metaphor, by which the subtle body purchases the gross body to fulfill its desire. And so if it's a lot of good karma, you become an Epicurean. That means an Epicurean means a person, a human being, who likes to go to different restaurants, has enough money to do so. I mean, sometimes in the news you read about these people who travel around the world sampling different ethnic food in different locations. So that's a person who had good karma. Of course, by sampling around the world, by traveling around the world and sampling different types of food, the person's using up his good karma and he's going to get a lot of bad karma, especially if he's eating meat, fish, or eggs. So, okay, let's take the subtle body who doesn't have a lot of good money karma, or good karma money. Then he takes a birth as literally a pig. Not only does he pig out, but he's literally a pig. So the subtle body actually carries you to the next gross body. The gross body, that's this thing you can touch. I know a lot of you don't relate to earth, water, fire, air, ether. But anyway, that's solid. Earth is solid, and there's liquid, and there's air, and there's fire, like electricity. Yeah, plasma. For those of you who are scientists, plasma. Ooh, that's fire. And then what is ether? Ether is just space. Like, I'm demarcating ether. I can't see directly ether, but I see the existence of ether because there's a space between my two hands that I'm holding up. So that's ether, space. Even if you take away all the air, all the fire, all the earth, and put something in a vacuum jar, there's still space in the vacuum jar. And that's what ether is. Hare Krishna. The subtle body does not change. When the subtle body rejects the gross body, it takes the impressions of karma produced by the gross body and attains another gross. That's exactly what I just said. According to the descriptions of Panchagni Vidya, that means the 5 fire knowledge mentioned in the Vedas, the jiva attains another body and another situation. The system of meditation on Chittagni, that means the spiritual fire, Rishtagni, fire of Bhojanangni, the fire of enjoyment, and the fire of knowledge, and Reta Havanagni. Pumsa Reta. Anyway, we won't get into that because it's something I don't want to talk about in class. Are described in Chandogya Upanishad and Brahma Sutra. And that's Reta Havanagni. I'll just give you a hint of what it means because I'm not going to mention. It's something like left-handed tantra. Chandogya Upanishad Brahma Sutras. By previous lives, desires, and impressions of karma, the jiva attains a new body. So there's karma again, which is what I talked about. The jiva attains a new body and his nature. According to this nature, he attains a varna. What is a varna? Varna means you're a Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. Following varnashram, he performs more karmas. He gets more karma, more impressions. After death, again, he follows the same process. The first covering on the jiva's eternal swarup is the subtle body, and the second covering is the gross body. So again, gross body keeps changing, subtle body Doesn't. You don't give up the subtle body until you become Krishna conscious. With Krishna consciousness dissolves the subtle body. Okay? But the subtle body changes, it's like mutable, depending on the impressions it has, the desires. Then it's mutable, but it's not a different body. Just like our gross body grows. Or actually doesn't grow. We're actually changing bodies, but the subtle body is never changing bodies. It's just changing shape. It's like a piece of clay, according to the impressions on a piece of clay. So like when I was young, I would play with this clay called silly putty. And I would go with this clay to the comic books I was reading, press it down in the comic books, and I would pull up the impression, the reverse impression, of whatever it was taken from the comic book. So, what is the difference between the eternal body? So, this is a good question. What is the difference between the eternal body and the subtle body? Babaji said the eternal body is a spiritual particle without fault. That's you, buddy. It has a sense of I. Of course, the material world, the sense of I is I am the enjoyer, I am the proprietor. Or I and mine. The subtle body is composed of transformations. We're talking about it keeps transforming. Mind, intelligence, and ahankara means false ego related to matter. It transforms. It gets transformed. It's like one of those. Well, some of you who watch movies know about the Transformers. One of the people watching really likes the Transformers. Unfortunately. Anyway, I won't tell you what it is. But he loves it. So, anyway, Prajnath said, are mind, intelligence, and ahankara material? If so, how do they accomplish the functions of knowledge? And here, is this subtle matter material? And obviously it is. So how do they accomplish the functions of knowledge? It's a very good question. So Babaji quotes from the Bhagavad Gita, famous verse. Bhumi rupo nalo vayu kamano buddhareva chahankar itiyame bina prakriti rashtala. Earth, water, fire, ether, as well as the subtle elements of the Tan mantras. These are the pradhana, mahatattva, and false ego, with the 10 senses. Now we're talking about Shankar philosophy. Pradhana means the unmanifested state of material energy. Mahatattva refers to the whole portion of the spiritual world that is dark. That's the Mahatattva, where we are. And false ego means the conception of I and mine, are my separated energy and 8 divisions. And this is all from the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, important verses. Apare mitas twanyam akit jiva bhutam mahabaho yayedam daryate jagat. This is my inferior energy. But understand my superior energy, which is different from this inferior energy. It is the jivas who employ the inferior energy for their enjoyment. In other words, we're of the superior energy, and we're identifying with the material energy. Does that make sense? We're superior, but we're identifying with earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego. False identification. That's our problem. So the solution, which we've been speaking about the last few days, is to change our identification. I'm a servant. That's who I am. I'm part and parcel of Krishna. I'm a servant of Krishna. I'm a servant of my spiritual master. That's my nature. Okay. So, Etadyarini bhutani sarvani chupadaraya Krishnaśya jagata prabhava pralayastata. Know that all things of the universe have their origin in these 2 energies, material energy and spiritual energy. And I am the origin and dissolution of the whole universe. That's Bhagavad Gita 7:6. That's Krishna speaking, of course. Okay. Material energy, spiritual energy. Everything comes from these two. And even the Jiva, as spoken or mentioned before, is basically the spiritual energy. According to the words of the Gita Upanishad, that's the Bhagavad Gita in case you didn't know, the Lord, complete in Chit Shakti, spiritual potency, has superior and inferior prakritis. The superior prakriti is the Jiva Shakti. Got it? We're the superior energy of the Lord. We're not inferior. But we're identifying with the inferior, and that's our problem. And the inferior prakriti is Maya Shakti. Jiva Shakti is endowed with spiritual consciousness. For this reason it is called para or superior, because we have consciousness. Maya Shakti is material, unconscious. For this reason it is called apara, or inferior. The inferior Shakti is different from the Jiva. This is common sense, I think. I don't need to explain that. The inferior Shakti has 8 gross elements, 5 gross elements, mind, intelligence, and ahankara. Actually has 8 elements. Okay, must be a typo here. The inferior Shakti, you should say, just cross that one out. Cross that gross. That has 8 elements, 5 gross elements, mind, intelligence, and ahankara. A typo there. Typo means a mistake, an editing. The mind, intelligence, and ahankara included in matter are particular material elements. So in other words, the subtle material elements are material elements. Though they have a form of knowledge, this knowledge is not spiritual in nature, but material. So our knowledge is material, unless it comes from above the descending process. That's why we have this thing called epistemology. Why do you know, or how do you know what you know? And we know what we know without any doubt, because that knowledge comes from above. But knowledge that comes from below is questionable. The mind. That means the material mind. The mind receives impressions from matter and establishes actions in the form of a mass of material knowledge. So whatever I'm doing is because, of course not Krishna consciousness, whatever I'm doing materially is because I've acquired some material knowledge. This action is based on matter, not spirit. Intelligence then imposes judgments of good or bad on this mass of knowledge. This is intelligence also based on matter. So our sense of good and bad, or ugly and pretty, is based on our knowledge of matter. Someone who's actually Krishna conscious will see all matter. I mean, we make distinctions, but we'll see all matter as Krishna separated energy. And to think that some matter is bad, like a piece of stool is bad, and cheesecake is good. Of course, obviously, they won't eat the piece of stool. They'll understand a particular type of matter is meant for a particular purpose. That's the point. A particular type of matter is meant for a particular purpose. But they won't think in terms of good or bad. This is bad. Of course, sometimes to function in this world, we have to use the terminology bad. But internally, we should be thinking, as Krishna says in the Gita, Vidya Vidya Sampane Brahmani Gavyastiti Suni Jaiva Swapakicha Pandita Samadarshanat. Someone who's actually a pundit will see equally. Or pebbles, stones, and gold. That's Gita, who will see exactly the same. The sense of I that arises on accepting this knowledge is based on matter, is not based on spirit. The sense of identity. These 3 actions combine and manifest the second swarup, a second form or identity for the jiva based on material relationships. So what is my swarup in this world? I'm a sannyasi. I'm going to be 74 years old, God forbid. And not God forbid, hopefully. I mean, it's not God forbid, I do want to live. This Swarup is called the subtle body. This Swarup is actually the conception we have about ourselves. You know, the I that I have about myself. That I am a Sannyasi, or I am a certain age, or I am American. And you've heard all these things before. Or, I am a great devotee. These are, when the sense of I in the subtle body, the jiva conquered by Maya, is strong, it covers the sense of I in the eternal swarup of the jiva. In other words, when our material attachment is strong, this is really the key right here, then we forget about our spiritual identity. You either got one or the two. You're either dry or wet. Of course, you're basically a little damp. But anyway, but the wetter it gets, the more you get soaked. All right, trying to figure out a good metaphor here. The more you get soaked, and then the more you get covered. You know, it's not an all or nothing thing. So Maya, or our sense of material identity, gets stronger and stronger and stronger, then we forget about our spiritual identity. That's why when you engage in sense grad, you know, people say, what's the problem with sense grad? We're not talking about spiritual sense grad. What's the problem of doing this, doing that, you know, eating any damn thing, watching all these movies? You know, what's the problem, Prabhu? Because you become more enamored in the material sense of I. And also, one of the mechanisms by which that happens is the interaction of the three modes of nature. Avatam Jnanametena Jnanino Nishivairina. That's Bhagavad Gita again. Avatam, the knowledge is covered. Avatam Jnanam Etena, the Jnana is knowledge. Jnanino Nishivairina, by something that burns always like fire. And that is Kamarupena Kontiya. It is the form of lust, the conception that I am the enjoyer. Again, I guess there's a sense of I. The solution is not to give up your sense of I, which would be Mayavad philosophy, but to actually consider I am Krishna's servant. I am a servant ready to do whatever Krishna wants. Think like that. Then nothing is beneath you. Sometimes people say, I am too good for that. No, nothing is beneath you. You're not too good for anything related to Krishna. Krishna's service. The sense of I related to the spiritual sun and the eternal swarup of the jiva is also eternal. Okay. Let me explain that. So our personal conception, or conception of ourself, related to Krishna, who is the spiritual sun, and related to our eternal form, is eternal. But we've forgotten it. That's the point. In other words, it is there, but we've forgotten it. In the liberated states, that ahankara again manifests. Well, the sense of identity, I mean, it has to be some editing required here. As long as the eternal body is suppressed within the subtle... that may refer to someone who's liberated just with Mayavad philosophy, but anyway, I'd have to clarify that. As long as the eternal body is suppressed within the subtle body, the identity related to matter remains strong. So as long as you... In other words, you can't get detached, just understanding this logically, you can't get detached from your material designation unless you are absorbed in your eternal... let me go back. You can't get detached from your material designation as long as you are not aware or cultivating your spiritual designation, or not designation, but your spiritual identity. So you're suppressing. So in other words, it's impossible to be detached, because unless you're attached This is something ABC, Krishna conscious ABC, unless you're actually attached to who you are. You know, forget about the material attachment. Forget it. You can't do that unless you become aware of who you are. Okay. The sense of I related to the spiritual is thus almost completely hidden. So, in other words, depending on how attached we are and how much sense grad we're involved in this world, or meditating on the material elements, or cultivating, was that Jayata Vishyak Pumsam, Sangos Tesha Bhajayate, Sangat Sanjayate, Kama Kama Kurta Bhajayate. So the more we're absorbed in matter, the more our sense of spiritual I does not manifest. The subtle body is fine. That doesn't mean we are fine. It is very fine as subtle. You know, subtle, fine. Basically, that's a tautology. Subtle means basically fine. For this reason, the gross body covers the subtle body. When the gross body covers the subtle body, identity with the gross body, identifying with one's varna, appears. So, and we identify with the nature of the gross body. I'm a Kshatriya, I'm a Brahman, I'm a Shudra. Excuse me. I'm a Vaishya. Mind, intelligence, and ahankara, that's false ego, are material, but being distortions of the functions of the Atma, they erroneously assume the role of knowledge. So, in other words, there is a spiritual mind, a spiritual intelligence, and spiritual, not exactly ahankara, false ego, but a spiritual ego. I mean, sometimes you find these impersonalists or Mayavadis say you have to give up your ego. No, you don't give up your ego. If you were to give up your ego, you would give up any sense of self-identification, which pretty much leaves you in a void without any sense of self-identification. You know, who am I? Well, I'm nothing. So anyway, so because the mind, intelligence, and false ego are distortions of the real mind, intelligence, and ego, then we think that they're giving us knowledge. Okay, yeah, that's actually a good way to put it. They're distortions, reflections, but they're actually expansions or distortions or reflections of the real stuff, just like a mirror image. Again, we go back to the mirror image. So in the spiritual world, what is it? What is the state of the Vaishnava poem? Kabihama Herabo Sri Vrindavana. What is that? The mind actually becomes Vrindavana, manifests Vrindavan in the spiritual realm. And about, as far as intelligence, Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yedam Mamam Bhyanti Te, as Krishna says, Tesham Satari Yuktanam Bhajatam Pratipurvakam Tadari Buddhi Yogam Tam Yedam Mamam Bhyanti Te. What does it mean? To those who worship me with devotion. Tesham Satari, always with devotion, connected. Bhajatam Pratipurvakam Tadami Buddhi Yogam Tam. I personally give them the intelligence by which they can come to me. So that's the spiritual intelligence comes by bhakti. You love Krishna. Krishna says here, take some good intelligence. And understand your ego or identification. Okay, before we get into Brajana's next question, I know I'm trying to make this as easy to understand as possible for everybody. So we're going rather slowly through the whole thing. I mean, later on we're going to get into more stories in the Jaiva Dharma. But right now, establishing who the Jiva is, what the Jiva's relationship with Krishna is, and who Krishna is, and these are all important aspects of what we call Sambandha Gyan. Then we will get more into Avideya, and ultimately Prayojana. Okay, on that happy note, we're going to stop sharing, and I apologize for any of the internet glitches or the glitches we had in the beginning, but we've been on Facebook the whole time. I just checked my other monitor here. And so we will allow you to unmute yourselves and ask questions if you like to ask questions. How about that? So does anybody have a question? You can either type in the chat window, or you can raise your hand, or you can, what else? You can unmute yourself like Rishikesh has just done. Okay, so Rishikesh, what's the question? Oh, you unmuted yourself. I can't hear you.
Hare Krishna, Gurudev. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah. What's the question?
Uh, Gurudev, my question is, if I'm a spirit, I mean, I'm a spirit soul. I have a relationship with Krishna, which is so natural. Then why is it become so difficult to realize that? Just a
Because
basic understanding.
because you are difficult. You don't want it. I mean, as much as as much as you think you want it, you're still like really attached to the conception that you're the center. You're the center, and having Krishna in the center is a real hard thing to deal with. It sounds easy, but it's really hard to deal with it. Krishna's pleasure is the center, and so you're thinking your pleasure, even in Krishna consciousness, is the center. And as long as you keep thinking like that, then it becomes harder or hard to attain Krishna consciousness. So
So
it
what's the
takes
solution, Gurudev?
the solution. What is that? Utsahan Nischaya Darya Tat Karma Pravartanat. Patience, enthusiasm, serving the Vaishnavas. Actually, we were talking about this morning. It was actually interesting. I mentioned in class that uh, we were talking about how one has. I don't know if anyone heard in class today, but anyway, we were talking about it's important to develop the service attitude towards one's guru, the desire just to please one's guru. Whoops. So the way that one does that, I give one easy way to do that. You hear from people who have that service attitude. Now, in the early days of the movement, this is a replay of this morning's class, but in the early days of the movement, we had a brahmacharya ashram you move into, and it was basic training. You're a servant of Prabhupada. You're in the army now, whatever, Krishna's army now. That was the early days. But in the later days, nowadays, we're not training people up in ashrams anymore just because of practicalities, and then most people are actually immersed in their daily lives and they can't extricate themselves. So the way to do that, I think, is to associate with people who are immersed in that consciousness. And one way that inspires me, and because I did go through the whole ashram process, basic training with a sergeant and everything like that. So one way that inspires me is I hear regularly from other devotees who really love Prabhupada, want to serve Prabhupada. And I was mentioning today that I was watching a video. Generally I try to watch the memory videos while I'm taking prasadam. And it really helps me a lot because you can see the devotee's devotion for Prabhupada. Anyway, so there's one devotee that watches, my dear godbrother friend, Kirti Raj, and his devotion was just overflowing in this particular memory. And I was just like, wow. I mean, I got so much from that association. So I think association is the key to answer your question. Association gives inspiration. Inspiration. Okay, thank you, Rishikesh, for that question. And
Thank you, Gurudev. Thank you so much.
of course, one of my dear disciples just posted, greed is good. Uh-oh. I think we need to talk to him. Anyway, so greed, yes, greed for Krishna consciousness. Yes, greed is not necessarily bad, but loyum is the word for greed in Sanskrit. So this loyum, which is actually the cause of material entanglement, or greed for material things, entangles us. Whereas greed for Krishna consciousness, or as Prabhupada sometimes would speak, tears in the eyes, crying tears, is the price of devotional service. So in one sense, greed is good. So Lord Brahma asks the question, Hare Krishna Maharaj, please, what are impressions? Okay, impressions. Okay, let's get into what an impression is. Okay, let's take, again, a lump of clay. How's that sound? Lump of clay, and you push on it in different ways, or you can mold different things, like, I guess, plaster Paris, even that's even better than a lump of clay. You can take a mold of something. Let's say, if I have a deity, not an installed deity, of course, and I put clay, or, yeah, clay actually would be good. You can make a mold with clay, too. And so then you take the clay off the deity or the form, and you have the reverse image. So you have an impression. That's an impression. So the subtle body is something like that. Karanam guna sangasha sadasa janma jonishu. This is Krishna's description in the Gita. That the cause of our entanglement is guna sanga, which gives you the impressions. Or let's even talk about remembrances. Let's put it in a different context. Remembrance on the subtle body. Memories that are there, for lack of better words, subconsciously or even like below the level of subconsciousness, that are their impressions. I mean, let's try to give it more, or a bigger impression. Okay, an idea. So there's like, when I was young, I played with fire. My mother did not like that. And so what she did is she took a little match or something like that and gave me a little tiny burn on the finger. And from that day forward, I've had healthy fear of fire. So that I had that impression, that mental impression of the dangers of fire. So in the same way, when we're in the material world, Krishna is giving us experiences, and we get these impressions. And actually, it's not necessary. It's not that each time I'm careful around fire, I remember my mother, I remember getting burnt. No, it's not necessary. Each time I'm careful around fire, it's just like, it's part of my nature. So that impression created an impression of my subtle body, or that whatever happened created an impression of my subtle body, influenced my consciousness to a certain degree, and therefore influenced the gross behavior, or the body's behavior. So that's what an impression is. I thought that was a thorough explanation. So anyway, so now it's time. It's on the hour, and it's time to see you all tomorrow. So thank you all for joining us. We had a nice group today, 30 people. I am, again, sorry for all the internet glitches, which were not my fault, but actually we were on Facebook for the whole class after I went through all the procedures with the internet. Somehow or other it's working now. I'm looking at the other monitor, and it's working. So, thank you very much. All glory is to His Divine Grace. A.C. Bhaktivedanta.